Hello everyone, so today we're going to be covering this Hacker News post, which really grabbed my attention from the title, Why Combinator Backing AI Company to Abuse Factory Workers. Now I have not read any of this, I haven't read the comments, so I'm going in pretty much blind. And yeah, let's get started. And by the way guys, if you like this sort of tech adjacent content, please leave a like and subscribe so I know to make more of it. So let's start by reading this first line. So Optify.ai is a dystopian company backed by Y Combinator. They're using AI to further dehumanize and abuse individual factory workers and treat them like disposable automatons. Great word, automaton. I like that. Let's check out their website. They're still up, backed by Y Combinator. Boost your assembly line efficiency. To be fair, we've all heard factory worker horror stories. That's just a fact. But anyway, let's continue. See you now, we'll look at this a bit more detail in a bit, I suppose. See you now deleted post where they show how it works. Okay, so this is how it works. Hackyderm.io. I've not heard of that website before. Mastodon. So this is what so Ivan says this is what modern slavery looks like. Promoted by Y Combinator. Choose your investors well, folk. These cowards didn't even have the guts to let it alive. They deleted their post. Okay. If you think this is not going to get abused, you are a fool. Note down their names, hold them accountable. It's a bit extreme, but
37% line efficiency? That's bad. Let me call my supervisor.
So hang on. So it's building AI performance monitoring for factory workers, boosting line efficiency.
Vivan, have you been taking a look at line 6? It's not doing well at all.
On it, sir. Alright, let's see the Optify dashboard and see what's the issue with line 6. Oh, it's workspace 17. Workspace 17 is the bottleneck, the worst performing workspace here. Hey, number 17, what's going on, man? You're in red.
I've been working all day.
You've been working all day? You haven't hit your hourly output even once today.
Oh.
And you had 11.4% efficiency. This is really bad.
It's just been a rough day.
Rough day? More like a rough month.
Well, I'm gonna be real. Like the video itself is pretty funny, though, right? I think that's. I know I should be upset about it, but the video itself is funny. But we can talk about the implications and get more serious. But I actually think the video is pretty funny, and they look quite young. And I feel like this is gonna be one of those things where they didn't really think about it in a sort of bad way for it to be abused. They're probably a bit idealistic. They wanted to make something that is good at generating value for a company, right? They didn't think about the people. But yeah, it's a bit dystopian. By which I mean, if I were a factory worker and someone was watching me 24/7 and monitoring my output 24/7 and they could just look and call me out like that, I would not be working there. I would quit. That's not for me. And we've all, like, I think I already said this, we've all heard that, like, Amazon warehouse horror stories. So the founders look to be a couple of rich kids with little world and work experience. Classic. Always the way. We're CS grads from Duke, and because our families run manufacturing companies, okay? So they have, like, a little playground already to test things. They also display a profound lack of empathy by bragging about lowering stress for rich company owners, which they do by increasing the stress of everyone who works for them. Right, okay. But like, as the context unfolds, I'm liking these people less and less. But you know, maybe that's just the circles they run in. Know any manufacturing company owners? Let us know at founders at Optify, blah, blah, we'll help them drop their cortisol levels. I feel like people are being, I might be controversial here, but I feel like people are being too harsh. They just said, we can help owners drop their cortisol levels. But yeah, it was a very sort of, they didn't think about. It's a bit obtuse, I guess. Is it still listed? Yeah, they are still listed. Okay. You know, funnily enough, looking at the LinkedIn, I was going to do a video on LinkedIn lunatics today on Reddit because I promised I would, but a lot of it was just like, it was just sort of too aware. It was like, it wasn't really actual lunatics, it was just people taking the mick out of lunatics, so I scrapped that. Anyway, has there been Has this been manually delisted from the front page? It doesn't say it's flagged, but it's no longer on there. Edit, it looks like 157 now. I think I just misunderstand the ranking mechanism. Yeah, we just saw that they are, in fact, still listed. I set off the flame war detector. Moderators haven't touched it, except that we turned off the user flags on the story. Otherwise, it would be displaying. Okay. We moderate Hack and Use less, not more, when YCA or YC is part of the story. Ah, okay, interesting. I think that's a moderator. Anyway, I like to look at the sort of root comment rather than the responses. So let's keep going. And let me know your thoughts on this, by the way. We can check out their website in a bit. So I used to run a small factory. 2 assembly lines, 10 people. So 5 per assembly line, I'm guessing, or is it 20? 2 assembly lines, 10 people, so yeah. And something like this would have been useful. Not to force people to work harder, but to optimize movements and points of friction. I'd actively encourage and reward people for making suggestions, and we had a process in place to test if changes made things better and not just faster. We included easier, simpler, more enjoyable. Sadly, it's not about the tool in this case, it's how it's being promoted and positioned. The line, know who's working and know who's not, on their website says it all. That is a very... Let's see. Boost your assembly line. Where's that? I can't see it saying that. Bottlenecks. Automated reports. I think they've changed that. They've probably read the article. So yeah. And none of these actually click to anything. It's literally just so yeah. I agree with this. It's not the tech... I find technology can always be abused, right? And it can also be not abused. Sometimes things sound like a good idea. This is one of those things. If you frame it differently, if you just say, we can create this tool that will actually help us identify bottlenecks in how people are working, it's a good idea, right? But the problem is these types of tools will be used by individuals who will abuse their power, and they will probably not be very nice about it. I think the same thing happens in software development. It's not as extreme, but you know, you can have processes which they sound good in theory, but once you implement them, they're actually very toxic, and they just create more work for everyone. So exactly my thoughts. If this was a European demonstration, they would be talking about providing training to the worker on the line. Exactly. When you change the context to, we're using this to actually, for a training tool, then it's good. But, you know, this feels like it's like one step away from auto-firing someone for not meeting their quotas. I have no idea if that's how they run factories in India, but it definitely looks very off from a Western perspective. In Europe, the assumption would be that workers are trying their best, but they don't know better. In the video, the assumption is that the workers are cheating or slacking, and this tool can help bad actors. Yeah. The tool itself at core seems fine, though. Yeah, again, I mean, tools are neutral, generally speaking. Maybe even, you know, yeah. Any tool is neutral. Any privacy or abuse risk would be up to the legislature and operators to consider, but it's nothing unusual to monitor production lines. Yeah, exactly. I'm not convinced it's really that useful. Yeah, you'd have to sort of test that. And even then, it might not be useful long term. If you have rows of people sewing the same piece of clothing or similar, then it's not exactly hard to track output without digital surveillance. I'd agree with that. If you have, yeah. Because if you find those bottlenecks, then I feel like people's output must be tracked anyway. You don't have to watch them. And if their output isn't good, you can probably make the assumption that, you know, they're doing something incorrectly, perhaps. But to be honest, I have sympathy for all these sort of factory workers. It's hard work that probably doesn't pay that much, and I'll be honest, it's probably not a job I would want to do, which is a very entitled opinion to have, but yeah, it would be tough. I have done sort of like, I've worked in like supermarkets and stuff, and even that I thought was quite tough, so I have respect for anyone in retail as well. Bottlenecks will show themselves extremely fast if a single station is slower than usual. I suspect the purpose of these systems is actually to create a horrible work environment. I don't think this is the purpose. I do think that this is a valid consequence and a likely scenario, and again, we've heard stories of this happening with Amazon and stuff. Not because that is a good thing, but because it would drive away anyone who has other options and leave you with the most desperate people. Okay. The only thing truly embarrassing is that nobody at YC advised them that this ad is terribly amateur. Yeah, I know I laughed at it, but I kind of laughed at the advert. It was funny. Has the chance to look extremely bad. I agree with that. Did not advise, and in fact published to their feed. Weird optics. I'm not familiar with what I presume to be Indian factories, other than... Where are they from? I don't think it said they're from India. Where's Duke? CS courses. I'm just going to do that, so like I know where Duke is. I thought... Why is it so slow? I don't know. Someone can tell me, perhaps. Let's see, anyway. To be honest, this isn't that crazy. If you hire someone to do the job outputting 10 items per hour and that number's reasonable, that's the thing, is it reasonable, right? Because a bunch of other workers you hired for the same job are doing it, and one guy hits 1 per hour, then that guy shouldn't be doing that job. Fundamentally, this is true. It's a bit of a harsh reality, but it's true. If everyone else is managing it, then there's probably a problem. The outrage should be focused on the absolute meme of their ad, because they were like, let's literally have a convo with the individual, but refer to them as a work space and have them say human painful responses. But yeah, I mean, I know I laughed, but the advert is wild. It is insensitive. It's like, I've had a hard day. We don't care. Let's see. Is it dystopian or just real-time performance monitoring poorly marketed by inexperienced founders? I guess it's got people talking about it. They say no bad publicity. I don't know if that's true. Probably not. Seems like one of those pieces of advice that just isn't actually based in reality. And there are tools like this for tracking Git commits and velocity that I've been on the receiving end of. It probably makes less sense. I hate that as well, because it's like, that actually encourages... You always have to look at what's incentivized by what you create, right? You might have a idea, usually idealistic, of how it will improve stuff, but the reality is it sort of creates... Whenever you create something, you create incentives, you know, like policy. And when you're doing tracking commits, then you're creating this incentive to just make people commit every small thing and probably write more code than they need to. And it's toxic. It's toxic. It probably makes less... I've worked at places that were just so toxic with like tracking every single minute of your day. It probably makes less sense in that context, but if your job is to a repetitive task, I don't think it's necessarily abuse or dystopian to track it. I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a... Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true. Some jobs are just like, it's important to hit those numbers to actually promise, to essentially deliver what you promised, right? Monitoring bottlenecks isn't a bad thing. They probably could have chosen an example where the solution to the bottleneck didn't involve berating a low performer. Absolutely. The product should be marketed as a tool for monitoring and highlighting bottlenecks in the manufacturing production line. Yeah, I like blameless culture. If your engine, for example, it's somewhat common in software engineering thing, like if your engineers are producing bad code or there's problems in production, you shouldn't blame the individual. You should blame the process, because you should have a process where the individual isn't really like the bottleneck, right? It should be designed in a way that those problems can be solved. I don't know if I articulated that well, but essentially blameless culture is a good thing, I think. Of course, like if you're literally terrible, I think that's different. Like if you're awful, at some point, I think a company is allowed to say, we shouldn't be paying you for this. The way they made the video, however, to berate and mainly put down individual employees is so far from acceptable. That's not how personal performance issues should be managed in the real world. Completely void of human empathy, I agree. It shows the founders, and did YC view and approve this, are lacking in areas. Yeah, it's insensitive. The sort of performance, unfortunately, is necessary. Performance management is necessary. The problem is that we need tools for it to be built for people who can empathize with those subjected to them, and who want to do it to the right thing. Yeah. My previous company ran a warehouse, and there was a clear bell curve of productivity. Most people were fine, some were excellent, but some were below the level that was realistically achievable. We did careful and considerate analysis, and it helped improve productivity. When done badly, however, you end up with management using productivity tracking as a lever to increase productivity across the curve. Amazon driver delivery quotas are a great example. I mean, this is such a toxic thing. Think of all the little problems that would cause as well, like dangerous driving. Like, I know it sounds funny, but like that's probably the case. Like, if you're late for a quota, you're probably going to drive just a tiny bit more erratic. We heard about people peeing in bottles and stuff, so that's what they're talking about there. And it's like, yeah, again, what does it incentivize? What does your policy incentivize? And whatever it incentivizes is what people will do. Same with, funnily enough, it's like games, right? Games have metas. And those metas are generally defined by the game's mechanics or rules. And the game companies control those. But it's like, that's why in some games you end up with these really toxic metas, because those metas are incentivized, you know? And it's really annoying when companies don't change them. Brought to you by the VC famous for install monetizer. Make no mistake, it will basically back anything that makes money. There's no more high ground. And like it or not, this kind of AI, or should I say AI, is here to stay. I mean, I imagine like all of like the biggest sort of warehouses already have this technology. I'd be really surprised if they don't. I don't think it's like a revolutionary concept. I worked in a factory during university. Made playground equipment out of metal. I never thought, everything you see in the world, someone has to make. I've never thought about who makes the metal playgrounds that we see in our parks and stuff. Always fun to think about that. Every task had a reporting system, and the company knew exactly who was producing what. This was a long time ago. But they still use desktop calculators with paper tape to do calculations. I was only there for a relatively short time. I just wanted to work and make money for school. Having money as a kid is so cool. Temporarily, I had a small paper round. We were promised productivity bonuses. My section of the factory achieved 147% of expected production. Another had done almost 180%. Oops. But when the bosses did the bonus talk, they added in the trucking division and showed a 30% productivity due to excess dead heads, empty trucks. returning from equipment delivery. It was a management issue. They were not very good at finding return loads for those trucks, so the production bonus was calculated on the total score of the enterprise, so we got almost nothing on the factory floor for bonus. I'm sure that's just your boss's, like... I'm sure that was done on purpose. When my time there was done, a friend in accounting told me that I had rated as the most productive in the factory. Damn. Nice. I'd love that. I would have that framed. Most productive in the factory. I am the ideal citizen. So he had seen the numbers as they were a ranking sheet that was calculated every week. Remember, again, this is years ago, and they're already ranking your productivity. You don't need surveillance unless, like, it's literally tracking, like, optimization of movements. You know. The point of this post is that this type of thing, monitor the employees, has been a thing for a very, very long time. Exactly. It is the humans running the factory that decide the reward, encourage, promote these work hard or not. It's always a human problem. You can have toxic people, you can have nice people. The response here would be significantly different if this was about measuring performance of software engineers in wealthy countries. Would it? I don't know. I mean, yes, obviously. There's a lot less room for exploitation of white-collar workers in wealthy countries than sweatshops. So performance I don't know if this is true. Like, I'm not saying this isn't true, but I think people would still be... If it was, like, the same sort of level of intrusion, I think people would have exactly the same response. So I disagree with that. So performance quantifying software still deserves a lot of scrutiny, yeah. It definitely does. It's not a... You know, I don't care. I'll say I worked at a company where we literally had a stand-up at 9:15, and then, like, 4:15, and then, like, in the afternoon. And at 9:15, they'll be like, what have you got done since the last stand-up? And it's like, the last stand-up was an hour ago. It's like, it was so toxic. And if a ticket had 7 hours on it, and you took 8 hours, you had to have 7 hours was the work day. You had to have a, like, damn good reason. Whereas most places I've worked at have really good culture, you know, and I actually end up being more productive in those cultures. I don't know about you. I enjoy working then. As someone who grew up in a third world country and whose mother owned a clothing factory, this seems fine. The response is an indication of how little people know about how their t-shirts are made. This is a really interesting comment. This is someone who grew up in a third world country. I don't know if we still use that term, but, you know, I guess they're trying to get a point across. And it is true. I actually love books that are about, like, real experiences that I just would never have for this reason. Because the world is crazy, and most of us do live in bubbles, you know? It's just a fact. Especially Redditors. Anyway, where are we at? 23 minutes. Damn, I didn't think it would go on this long. I always end up accidentally rambling for ages. Cool. Well, if you're still here, please leave a like, subscribe. Hopefully I didn't offend you by laughing at that stupid video. And yeah, see you in the next one.